Iraq is not making small moves anymore. What you are about to hear in the next few minutes has the potential to reshape how serious Iraqi dinar investors are thinking about their positions right now. The United States froze millions in Iraqi funds, Baghdad responded. And now a new national budget is sitting at the center of one of the most consequential financial moments Iraq has had in years. If you have been following the Iraqi dinar for any length of time, you already know that when these three forces collide simultaneously, something significant is usually around the corner. Stay with me through this entire analysis because the final point I'm going to share with you may completely change how you interpret today's news. Let us start with what actually happened, because the details here matter enormously and most people are glossing over them. The United States, through its financial oversight mechanisms connected to sanctions compliance and dollar clearing systems, effectively froze or restricted access to millions of dollars held in accounts linked to Iraqi financial entities. Now, to understand why this is significant, you need to remember that Iraq conducts a massive portion of its international trade in US dollars. The Central Bank of Iraq holds dollar reserves. Iraqi banks process dollar transactions. And for years, the entire economic architecture of modern Iraq has been built on dollar dependency. When Washington tightens that pipeline, Baghdad does not just feel discomfort. Baghdad feels it in every corner of its economy almost immediately. But here is what many investors are overlooking. Iraq did not quietly absorb this pressure, Iraq responded. Senior Iraqi officials began accelerating conversations around reducing dollar dependency in trade settlements, and the Central Bank of Iraq has been quietly expanding its work with alternative currencies for cross-border transactions. This is not the first time we have seen this pattern. Back in 2023, when the United States implemented stricter dollar auction oversight that caused the Iraqi dinar to experience significant depreciation pressure on the parallel market, Iraq initially struggled, but then began the longer process of reforming its currency management systems. What we are seeing today is a more mature, more deliberate response from Baghdad. And that maturity is exactly what experienced dinar analysts have been waiting to observe. Now let us talk about the Central Bank of Iraq, because the CBI's recent posture tells a very specific story. The CBI has maintained the official exchange rate at approximately 1,220 Iraqi dinars per US dollar, a rate that was set during the late 2022 reforms. But on the parallel market, the gap between the official rate and the street rate has been a persistent source of tension. What is happening right now is that the CBI is under dual pressure. On one side, there is external pressure from US financial restrictions that are limiting dollar liquidity. On the other side, there is internal pressure from Iraqi citizens and merchants who are watching the cost of imported goods rise and asking very direct questions about monetary stability. The CBI's response to this dual pressure will be one of the most important signals investors can watch in the coming weeks. Any statement, any policy adjustment, any change in the foreign currency auction volumes from the CBI should be treated as a primary indicator, not a secondary one. But that is only part of the story, because sitting directly in the middle of all of this is Iraq's federal budget, and the budget is where the most consequential decisions for the Iraqi dinar will ultimately be made. Iraq passed a 3-year budget framework, and the numbers embedded in that budget carry enormous implications. The budget was built on an assumed oil price of around $70 US per barrel, and it projected spending levels that require consistent, substantial oil revenue to remain sustainable. Now here is where things get genuinely interesting for dinar holders. When a government builds a budget around specific oil prices and specific exchange rate assumptions, any meaningful shift in either of those variables creates pressure for policy adjustment. Iraq's budget implicitly assumes a certain level of dinar stability. If oil revenues fall short, or if the dollar liquidity situation worsens, the government faces a very uncomfortable choice between cutting spending, borrowing more, or adjusting the exchange rate environment. This detail may change how investors view today's news entirely. Iraq is not simply reacting to American financial pressure in isolation. Iraq is navigating that pressure while simultaneously managing a budget cycle, an ongoing effort to bring the parallel market rate closer to the official rate, and long-term economic reform commitments made to international financial institutions. These are not separate storylines. They are threads in the same fabric. And when you see them together, the picture that emerges is of a country that is under real pressure, but also genuinely engaged in structural reform in a way that has no clear historical parallel in the modern Iraqi dinar story. Let us talk about oil for a moment, because no serious Iraqi dinar analysis can ignore the oil market, and right now the oil market is sending mixed signals that matter deeply for Baghdad. Global oil prices have faced downward pressure amid concerns about demand from major economies and ongoing production decisions from OPEC and its partners. Iraq remains one of OPEC's largest producers, and oil revenue funds the overwhelming majority of the Iraqi federal budget. When oil prices soften, Iraq's fiscal cushion shrinks. When that cushion shrinks, the government's ability to maintain currency stability through foreign reserve management becomes more constrained. The CBI's foreign reserves are the primary tool for defending the official exchange rate. Those reserves are replenished largely through oil export revenues. This connection is direct, it is structural, and it is the reason why every serious dinar investor should have one eye on Baghdad and one eye on global energy markets simultaneously. Here is what many casual observers are missing about the broader geopolitical dimension. Iraq's move to reduce dollar dependency, however gradual and cautious it may be, is happening in a global environment where multiple nations are exploring similar transitions. Now, this does not mean the dollar is collapsing or that Iraq is about to implement some dramatic monetary reset. What it does mean is that Iraq is positioning itself with more financial flexibility than it had 3 years ago. The expansion of trade in alternative currencies, the deepening of relationships with regional financial partners, and the ongoing negotiations around oil payment mechanisms all reflect a strategic shift that is slow-moving but directionally consistent. For Iraqi dinar holders, the relevant question is not whether this transition happens overnight. The relevant question is whether Iraq's long-term financial architecture is becoming more or less stable. And the honest answer, based on the available evidence, is that the trend is toward greater stability, even if the path there is turbulent. Now let us address the scenario that every Iraqi dinar investor is ultimately thinking about, because it would be a disservice to this audience to build all of this analysis and then avoid the central question. Is there a realistic path to an upward revaluation of the Iraqi dinar? Here is how an experienced analyst approaches that question honestly. The conditions that would need to exist for the CBI to consider any meaningful upward adjustment to the official exchange rate include sustained oil revenues well above budget assumptions, a significant reduction in the parallel market premium, meaning the street rate and the official rate need to be close together, successful implementation of anti-money laundering, and financial compliance reforms that satisfy international partners, including the United States, and a level of political stability in Baghdad sufficient for the government to make and sustain bold monetary decisions. Are all of those conditions present today? No. Are several of them moving in the right direction? Yes. And that nuanced answer, uncomfortable as it may be for those looking for simple predictions, is the most valuable thing I can offer you. The next development to watch could be even more important than what we have discussed today. Iraq's relationship with the International Monetary Fund and World Bank involves ongoing reform benchmarks. Any positive assessment from those institutions, any statement indicating that Iraq is meeting its structural reform commitments, would be a significant signal. Similarly, watch for any official CBI communication about foreign reserve levels, because reserve adequacy is the single most important technical factor in exchange rate sustainability. So let us bring this full circle and give you the honest takeaway that this analysis is designed to deliver. Iraq is navigating a genuinely complex moment. The freezing of dollar-linked funds by the United States is a real pressure, not a minor footnote. Baghdad's response, however measured, reflects a country that is learning from past currency crises and attempting to build more resilient financial systems. The new budget is both an opportunity and a constraint. Oil markets remain the wild card that can accelerate or delay every other development, and the Central Bank of Iraq's decisions in the weeks ahead will be the clearest signal available to anyone watching this space seriously. What this moment is not is a reason for panic, and it is not a reason for irrational euphoria either. It is a reason to stay informed, to separate verified developments from speculation, and to approach the Iraqi dinar story with the patience and analytical discipline that any serious investment requires. The investors who have navigated this space successfully over the years are not the ones who reacted to every headline. They are the ones who understood the underlying dynamics, tracked the right indicators, and maintained perspective when the noise was loudest. If this analysis gave you genuine clarity on what is happening in Iraq right now, I want to ask you to do something that genuinely helps this channel and this community grow. Hit the like button right now, because it tells the platform that this kind of serious, grounded analysis is worth sharing with more investors who need it. Subscribe if you are not already part of this community, because the developments we're watching in Iraq are moving quickly, and you do not want to miss the next major update when it comes. Share this video with anyone in your network who holds Iraqi dinar or is trying to understand what is happening in Iraq's economy right now. And turn on the notification bell so that when the CBI makes a move, when the budget situation develops, or when a major geopolitical shift touches Iraq's financial system, you are among the first to know. This community is built on honest analysis and long-term trust, and I will be here with the next update as soon as the situation develops. Stay patient, stay informed, and I will see you in the next one.